Hey guys, I am going to go over week 4 practice question 1A and 1B in this video. If you haven't read through the notes that we wrote out explaining how to do these questions, you should pause this video and read through those notes first. Do you pause yet? Make sure you pause, read those notes. After you read these notes and you come back to this video, we can go over it together. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. This is going to be how we complete the square with 2 variables. Let me write out what the question is. This is question 1A. And we have an equation y squared plus x squared minus 8x minus 20 equals 0. So this is my equation. Start by writing it out. As I go through this, I'm going to label all the steps. Some of them are the same as when we solve for 1 variable. We just add a few extra steps in when we have 2 variables. Again, we have 2 variables because we have y squared and we have x squared and 8x. So we have x's and we have y's. That's where our 2 variables come from. So step 1, we're going to take any numbers that don't have variables attached to them and move them to the right side of the equal sign. Okay, so I have this minus 20. I want to get that over to the right side. So I get y squared plus x squared minus 8x equals 20. And the way I got this was in order to get this over to the other side, I used the opposite. Minus 20, I did plus 20. I do it to that side, I do it to this side, I get plus 20. Okay, and then when I work it out, canceled on this side, and I get 20 on this side. Step 2, make sure you're labeling this stuff for yourself too. This is grouping. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to group my x's and y's together in parentheses. So I want to get my x stuff together and my y stuff together. So x squared minus 8x plus, and I have only y squared equals 20. I need to go back and add my squareds up here. So I get this, x squared here and y squared here equals 20. The 20 went down to the next line. I'm gonna scratch it out. I want you to see it all on the same line. Okay, so that's what we have for step 2. For step 3, we're going to be doing some dividing and squaring. This is similar to what we did with 1 variable. So, but now I need to do it for x's and I need to do it for y's. For x, I'm gonna take my number that's attached to a variable, but not my variable squared. So this is minus 8. That's my number that's attached to a variable. So I get minus 8. I'm going to divide it by 2. That gives me negative 4. Then I'm going to take that number and I'm going to square it. So I do negative 4 squared. That gives me negative 4 times negative 4, 16. I'm going to hold on to these numbers. I need them for future steps. For y, I don't have anything associated with a variable that's not squared. I only have y squared. So that's 0. I can still do this step out. 0 divided by 2 is 0. And 0 squared is 0. If I had something to group in parentheses with this y up here, the same way I did for x, I would use that number here instead of 0. All right, so my next step, step 4, I'm going to take my numbers that I found in squaring step here and add them to both sides. I want to add the x number to my x expression up here. So I get x squared minus 8x plus 16. And then I have plus y squared. I could say plus 0, but it's the same as not adding that in since it doesn't change what it is. And it equals, I had 20 plus 16, and I could do this plus 0. It doesn't really change how it's going to solve out. But you need to add these numbers to both sides. For step 5, I'm just going to actually calculate out what's happening on the right side of the equal sign. So I have x squared minus 8x plus 16 plus y squared equals 20 plus 16, that's 36. So all I did for this step was this math right here. Okay. Step 6 is going to be factoring. And I need to factor my x expression and my y expression. Because I only have y squared, I don't need to factor that out. If I had something in parentheses like this, I would do it both for x and for y. So let's go ahead and do it for x. I know when I factor, I need to set out these two sets of parentheses, and they're going to be multiplying together. So I'm just creating those parentheses that I'm going to fill in, and I'm going to leave the rest the same. Y squared equals 36. That's going to stay the same even as I factor. So to factor, I look at what variable is squared. In this case, it's x, and I put one of them at the beginning of each of my parentheses. So I have an x from this x squared, one going here and one going here. Then I need to figure out what number, when I add it to itself, gives me -8. So what two numbers add to -8, and what two numbers multiply to +16. But step 2, just like with one variable, when we solved it, not step 2, sorry, step 3 gives me the answer, and it's this, -4. -4 plus -4 adds to -8. -4 times -4 multiplies to 16. So this number is what I put in to finish my factoring. -4, -4, okay? My last step, step 7, is just sort of simplifying. If I have x minus 4 times x minus 4, I'm multiplying it by itself. In other words, I'm squaring. So I'm going to do x minus 4 squared plus y squared equals 36. So this is my completed square with 2 variables. These 7 steps will always be the same. Okay. Okay, so those 7 steps are always the same. For 1B, you're asked to find the center and radius. The center and radius based on this equation. So before we can solve for that, we need to think back to what is the circle equation. The circle equation we learned in week 3 is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So this is my circle equation, and the center is represented by h comma k. That represents a coordinate point where the center of my circle is, and I can see h and k here in this equation. So those numbers represent my coordinate point that is the center of a circle. My radius is represented by r squared. That's saying radius squared, so I'm going to have to square root whatever it is in order to find what the actual radius is. And just as a refresher while we're doing this, the edge point of a circle is represented by x comma y. That's the coordinate point of any edge point of the circle. And you can see that in this equation right here, this x and y. So remember, the center is h, k. If I look back to my equation, the problem equation, it was x minus 4 squared plus y squared equals 36. Now that I have these 2 equations written on top of each other, it's really easy to see where the points of comparison are. So I know my center is HK. Well, what's in the H spot in the equation that we're working with? 4. Okay. In the original circle equation, it's minus H. So as long as this is minus, this is going to be a positive number because the signs match. Okay. So 4. And then what's in my K spot? There's nothing. Y minus, there's nothing up here that looks like that. It's going to be 0. So this is my center. For my radius, I see 36 matches where r squared is. So r squared equals 36. But in order to solve for r squared, I'm going to need to square root both of these. The square root of 36. What times itself gives me 36? R equals 6. So this is how you solve. First, completing the square so that it looks like a circle equation. Then using the circle equation and comparing it to the equation you created to find center and radius. The rest of the questions in this problem set are going to ask you to do the same thing. This question also asks you 1C to graph. In order to do this, you're going to need to draw a plot. There's your Y, there's your X. Make hash marks, tick marks, about 10 in every direction. I'm not going to plot this whole thing for you, but in order to plot the circle, you're going to want to take the center point you found, plot your center, okay? So plot your center. Then you're going to draw or plot radius going up, right, down, and left. So you'll just make like dots where the radius would be. Then you're gonna connect edge points in circular fashion. It's not gonna be a perfect looking circle, but it's enough to show that you know how to plot a circle. So plot your center, plot your radius in 4 directions, connect your edge point. Remember your radius is this 6. So you would go from your center, count 6 up, 6 right, 6 down, 6 left. And that's how you're gonna solve for question 1. Use this method to solve the rest of the problems in the problem set on your own. You got this.